Hey, y'all. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Unfeigned the podcast. I'm Jay. I'll be your host. And on today's episode, I'm going to take you through a bit of a journey that I was on this morning. Now, you'll have to track with me because I'm going to walk you through the process of how I got to where I got to. But I want to let you know that I'm going to unpack this further on some other episodes. But let me start by saying this. I think a lot about relationships. I think a lot about how men and women react, how they respond to each other. I often think about why relationships break down, what leads to a good relationship. Sometimes you see people who just are happy with each other. They just have a good relationship and sometimes I think like what's their secret, right? What are the ingredients in their relationship that makes it so? And then you see other relationships that are torn apart or broken and they're just a struggle and it's the same vicious cycle and you think the same thing. Like what are the ingredients in their relationship that make it like that? And I think about these things a lot and it's sad, honestly. It's heartbreaking. Um, but I have this desire for relationships, for men and women to experience a good relationship, the right relationship, right? And so anyway, just a little bit of a backstory, but so the way my brain works is it moves extremely fast. My brain works. Sometimes it feels a little crazy. It just moves very fast. I can think about 172 different things all at the same time, and I can connect the dots of all those things all at the same time. And this morning, while I was getting ready to get in the shower, um, my thoughts were, on some people and some different relationships and things like that. And then it went to like, why was I the way I was as opposed to now? So what's different? Like what's different? Why was I that way then and I'm not that way now? I'm different now. And so I started just to think about that. And I'm going to take you through this little journey of how my brain worked in this moment. And I'm going to map it out for you. I need you to track with me. So strap in. If it seems a little bit jumbled, that's okay. It probably is. But the dots will connect. Just kind of stay with me. Okay, so I'm getting ready to get in the shower, and I started to think about how I was with my in my marriage. And I started to think about what were the things, like what was it that um that caused me to respond to my ex-wife in a certain way or caused me to react in a certain situation. Like what was it? What was going on? Like what was the deal? As opposed to now where my mindset's completely different. I react completely different. I respond completely different. I have uh, views that are completely different, and I'm just different when it comes to relationship. And I'm trying to figure out why. So I'm standing there, and I thought, okay, I believe that a lot of this has to do with how we see each other, right? How men and women see each other. And then I thought, well, what does that even mean, right? Like it's so much more than just about looking at someone, right? And seeing what they look like. It's so much more. And so I thought, what does that mean? Like when I say how do I see her, or how does a husband see his wife or a wife see her husband? Like what does that mean? And I thought, okay, the 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 thing that kept coming to my mind when I thought about what does that actually mean when I say how do we see each other is perspective. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to look it up. 'Cause I know what perspective is. We all know what perspective is. We've heard it said, like, "This is my perspective on this," and "What's your perspective?" And according to this perspective, we use that word. We know what it means, but what does it really mean, right? So I wanted to check out what the technical definition was, and so I looked it up, and it's listen, y'all, it's interesting. It's interesting, and forgive me if I'm geeking out a little bit here. You're gonna have to stay with me, but this stuff is fascinating to me. So, well, when you look up perspective, um, on in this on this particular site, it gives you two definitions, right? First one is the art of drawing solid subjects on a two-dimensional surface so as to give the right impression of their height, width, depth, and position in relation to each other when viewed from a particular point. I thought, man, that's kind of cool, right? You're going to draw something on a two-dimensional surface, and you're going to draw it in such a way that you can actually tell what the height, width, depth, the position, where you get this idea of what it really looks like, even though you're drawing it on a two-dimensional surface. I thought that was cool. The second part of that was a particular attitude toward or way of regarding something, a point of view. I think that's what we refer to the most, right? And so I thought, okay, that's interesting because when I say how do I see this person? How does this husband see his wife or this wife see her husband? Or how do these people that are in a relationship see each other? This is what I mean. What's their perspective? Okay, so just keep that in mind. And it's very, very much deeper than just what is on a two-dimensional surface. Okay, in regards to relationship, it goes very much deeper, and I'm going to get into that. But keep that in mind. So I thought, okay, I've said this often. I've said this very, very much throughout my life, especially on this podcast. I make reference to our perspective, right? And what influences our perspective and how important perspective is. And I thought, man, I really believe, here's a side note, I really believe in relationships that most of the problems come from how we see each other. And if we see each other a certain way, that we're going to act a certain way. And I've said that for a long time, especially over the last 9 years. On this healing journey, I feel like I have a more healed version of relationships and how I view relationships. But I've often said that the way we see each other is how we act. And so I thought, okay, that makes sense. Our perspective, right? And then I thought, okay, but that's not exactly what I'm talking about. That's not exactly encompassing what I mean by when I say that most of the problems in relationships come from of how the man sees the woman or how the woman sees the man. And I was like, okay, well, we're on the right track. Perspective is on the right track, but what's the thing? Like, what am I missing? And so my brain started to work, and it went to the word perception. Okay, and so again, same thing. I thought I know what perception is. Like I know what perception is, and we all know what perception is. We've used it, right? We say like my perception of this or your perception is or what we perceive to be blah blah blah. All right, so we know what it means, but I thought, you know what, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna geek out a little bit. I'm gonna look up the technical definition, and so when you so literally when you ask Google, this is what comes up. It says perception refers to the process of organizing, interpreting, and making sense of sensory information in order to understand our environment. Okay. So basically, and this is super fascinating to me. So just bear with me, strap in a little bit, just stay with me. It's all going to come together. It's all going to make sense. This is fascinating to me. So our perception involves our senses, and it involves our brain processing these signals that we get involving our senses. So what we see, touch, smell, hear, taste, we're receiving all of this information, and our brain is organizing it in such a way that we can make a determination about what we're seeing, right? Or our environment, or what we're understanding, those kinds of things. And I thought this is amazing. So I thought, okay, so if our perspective, right? If our perspective is what we're seeing and how we're seeing it, and our perception is what we're doing with the information we're receiving from our perspective, I was like, oh man, this is amazing. Okay, so I felt like I was onto something, but I'm still trying to like connect the dots. And here's the thought that came to me. And this is amazing, y'all. Like this excites me because this is it. This is exactly it. This is the difference between me back then and me now. And this is specific to relationships, specifically regarding relationships and how we should be relating to one another in a relationship. So if you're not in a relationship, that's okay. because what I'm about to talk about is extremely important for when you get into a relationship. Should you get into a relationship? If you're in a relationship, this may shed some light. This may provide some clarity on some things, maybe why some things are still broken or still happening between you and your partner. It may provide some clarity on what to do, like the next steps. But either way, glean from it what you will. Hopefully, this speaks to someone, but this spoke to me. So, this episode is really about my epiphany or my discovery this morning. So, I'm standing there and I'm working through all of that. And then here's what came to mind. I thought, okay, well, which one influences the other? And if you've never thought about this, take just this moment while you're listening to this episode to really think through this. This is how my brain works. I know it's scary. I'm giving you a glimpse into Jay Miller's mind. That could be scary for some people. But I started to think, like, which one influences the other? So we have perspective and we have perception. Both um both are unique, but they both play a part in each other's roles, right? In each other's purposes. So we have our perspective, we have our perception, and I thought, well, which one influences the other? Because they they don't work. I don't think they work independently. Well, sorry, they work independently of each other. I don't think they work apart from each other, though. I think they work in conjunction with each other, but not at the same time. Stay with me. Not at the same time. I believe that one influences the other. And so I thought, well, which one? Right. And so I started to think through some different things. And again, y'all, my brain was moving. It was on fire. I'm connecting dots. I'm thinking about a gazillion different things all at the same time. And here's what came to my mind. I thought, okay, let me try to come up with a scenario on my own. Let me try to come up with a scenario that could prove this point, that could prove that one influences the other. That was my first challenge. Was I believe one influences the other, but is that true? So I needed to come up with something that could give me evidence that that statement is true, that one of those influences the other, right? In an order. The second thing was, I wanted after, if I could prove that that is true, right? I had to figure out which one then, right? And that was important to me because if it is true that one influences the other, that is paramount to how we are in a relationship. If we understand that, and I'm going to get to this, but if we understand, if it is true that one of those influences the other, if we discover and we understand which one it is that influences the other, there's only one simple thing that we have to do to protect our relationships. So I'm standing there and I thought, okay, let me come up with a scenario. And here's what I came up with. And I'm not saying that this is the best scenario, but this is the one I came up with and it worked for me. So let's say you see somebody. You're standing somewhere it could be anywhere in your mind. Let's just say it's a room. So you're standing in a room and not too far away, but a little bit in the distance, not too far away. Not far enough away that you can't make out details, but not super close that you can touch them, right? So somewhere in between. You see this person and they're hunched over. Their back is to you, but they're hunched over and you could tell that they're grabbing their stomach. Freeze that in your mind. So from your perspective, you see someone hunched over grabbing their stomach. What you're perceiving to be true, so your perspective is that you're behind this person and that's what you see. Your perception now says, well, it appears as though they're in pain. And so you're taking the information that you see and all of a sudden you come up with your perception is that this is true, that they're in pain and they might need help or they're feeling sick or something is causing them to hunch over, grab their stomach, and you've come up with this perception you're perceiving to be true that they're in pain. Now, and so, well, let's do this. Now let's take it from the other side. Same person hunched over, grabbing their stomach, but now you're on the other side. So now you're facing them. Your perspective is from in front of them. You see them hunched over, grabbing their stomach, but now you notice something. Now you notice they're laughing or smiling. So your perception becomes that they're not in pain, they don't need help. They found something extremely hilarious. They're 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 belly laughing. And so you don't wanna go over and help them because they're hurt. You wanna go over because you want some of whatever it is that they had, right? You wanna laugh like that. And so then I got to thinking, like, okay, I think it is true that our perspective, well, one influences the other. And I found that our perspective influences our perception. Let me say that again. Our perspective influences our perception. So then I started getting excited because I'm like, okay, I feel like it's true. I feel like it's true. I think it's true that one influences the other. And I think I've discovered which one it is just based on that little scenario. But then I started to think of other scenarios as well. And they all pointed to the fact that our perspective influences our perception. Here's the key though. Once our or based on our perspective, we form a perception. So once our perspective influences our perception, we behave out of that. We don't behave from our perspective. We behave from our perception. And so if that's true, here's the golden nugget, man. If that's true, then there's only one thing that we have to do. There's only one simple thing that we have to do to protect our relationships, to act right, to see our partners correctly, to have that quote unquote good relationship, that relationship that you see and you're like, man, what's their secret? What did they figured out? There's only one simple thing that we have to do that will guarantee that for us. And so we're gonna recap a bit here. And I want you to remember, I've said I did an episode about the one thing that you have to do that if we did this, we would never grow apart, right? And it was about serving the other person, right? And I went into it. Well, this is all connected. And so I thought, okay, if in fact, which I do believe this to be true, if in fact our perspective influences our perception, which causes us to behave in a certain manner. So our perspective influences our perception. We then behave out of our perception. All we have to do is change our perspective. Because in the example, when you're behind the person, you perceived a certain thing. When you were in front of that person, you perceived another thing. Well, what's the truth? The truth, we only discovered the truth based on the change of our perspective. Now, take that same example. Let's just say that that person bent over, grabbing their stomach, was in fact in pain. You would not know the truth. You would have your perception, but you would not know the truth until you changed your perspective. You had to go and look at it from a different angle. You had to go stand in a different spot. You had to make some discoveries. You had to do some research. You had to go and look about the expression on the face. You had to ask some questions. And so here's my thing, y'all. Our perspective influences our perception. And then we behave out of our perception. If we change our perspective, and this is where it gets deeper than just looking at someone. Okay, if we change our perspective, we can find the truth. For example, let's say I'm in a relationship and the woman I'm in a relationship is in the kitchen and I hear a cupboard door slam. From my perspective, and again, it's a little deeper than just seeing something. This goes a little bit deeper. My perspective is I see her in the kitchen. I heard this cabinet door slam. And she doesn't look happy. And so automatically from my perspective, I start to form this perception and I start to perceive that something's wrong. And so my perception becomes I take all the information I just saw and I come up with this analysis. I come up with this hypothesis that something's wrong. Well, here's where it got really exciting because all of this stuff is connected. All the stuff that I've been talking about is connected, right? So then once that's my perception, I start to behave out of my perception. And my inner critic starts to speak up. Well, is she mad at me? Is she mad at this? Is she mad at that? What's going on? Well, there are a number of things that cause us to behave, or there are a number of behaviors that result of that, right? So, because of my perspective and my perception from that perspective, I may then behave out of this perception that she's mad at me. And I may go on the attack. I may get defensive. I may shut down and leave because I'm like, I'm not dealing with that. I might want to try to fix it. I might want to try to defend myself, and not even defend, but I just want to go fix it. She looks unhappy. I need to make her happy. And I might just step in there and say, "Hey, you should do this," or "Have you thought about this?" or "Maybe you should do this," or "Maybe you shouldn't do this." And I'm just going to provide solution after solution. Maybe I'm somebody who uh, shrinks down in insecurity, and I want to leave. I want to get out of there, right? So I want to shut down. I want to avoid finding anything out, right? All of those behaviors are based solely on the perception that we got from our perspective. Now, here's where it gets deep. To change your perspective, and that's a simple. I mean, that's a simple example. I mean, it could honestly be you share something with your partner, and their reaction is such that it causes you to think something's up. Well, the process is the same, but the way that we change our perspective, if we want to not grow apart, if we want our relationship to not become broken, if we want our relationship to not be this vicious cycle of good, bad, good, bad, good, bad, like if we want our relationship to be good and healthy, if we want our relationship to be filled with passion, if we want our relationship to last, if we want our relationship to be the one that everyone says, what's their secret? All you have to do is change your perspective of it. And if we change our perspective, all it is in the example that I gave, is I change my perspective by going over there and asking some questions. And it's all connected, right? Be curious, not judgmental. And so I'm going to ask a question, and it's a simple question. I'm going to share my perspective, and I'm going to share my perception. So I'm going to say, I mean, maybe you have some pet names. I don't know, honey, sweetie, whatever. Like, I saw you slam a cabinet. I see that from my perspective, like what it appears is that you're unhappy or something's up or something's wrong, or um, is it something that I did? Is something bothering you? Do you need to talk about anything? Like I want to be here for you. So like, what's going on? Is something going on? That perspective is very much different than seeing it, watching it from a distance, and then going right into your perception. The change in perspective that I just said is the same thing as walking around that person who's hunched over, grabbing their belly, standing in front of them and investigating to see if they're smiling or crying or in pain or whatever. That's how you change a perspective. That and listen, I can't guarantee that it'll be one and done either, because if I go over there and she may say, and this could be, vice versa too with the guy and the girl, but she may say, I want to talk about it. Again, it goes back to my perspective will influence my perception, and I'll behave out of that perception. So if she says that, I'm back in the same formula, because my perspective says, well, she doesn't want to talk about it. And so I can form a perception that says, I'm going to leave, or okay, I'll leave it alone. Instead of changing the perspective, you just ask some questions like, honey, sweetie, baby, babe, whatever, like, are you sure you don't want to talk about it? Are you saying that because you're feeling bothered about something, like if it's something I did, I want to make it right. Like I love you and I don't want to cause this in you. And so if it's something I did, I want to make it right. And, I need your help to help me make it right. If it's not something I did, but something's bothering you, I want to step into that with you. I want to be in this with you. Like we're not going at this separate. We're doing life together. And if you're hurt, I'm hurt. Right. And I want to step in there with you. And so that's a change of perspective. When you change your perspective, your perception will also be changed. You'll discover the truth. What you perceive from that point will be truth. You'll get to the truth. But in order to do that, you have to first change your perspective. Y'all, I'm going to unpack this more because I really believe, and my heart aches. It aches for people in relationships that just can't quite figure it out. And you see so many broken relationships. You see so many people growing apart. You see so many separations and divorces. And you see so many people that otherwise want to work it out, want it to be a good relationship, want to make, and they just don't know why it's got to the point it's gotten to. They just don't know how to fix it. They don't know how to make it work. And they're sort of at a loss. And you just keep spiraling further and further into this brokenness. And at some point, it's hard to even take a first step. Like it's gotten to this point. How do we even get it back? And so my heart aches and it breaks for things like that. And so I want to unpack this more. And I'm saying this because this is my story. This is my story. I was that back then. I have a very different outlook on it now. And I want to unpack more of that because there are so many people in relationships that are stuck in this point and just don't know what to do or don't know why it's gotten there. And maybe there are relationships that are too far gone. I get it. But maybe yours isn't, right? Maybe it's not. And maybe something like this could provide some clarity or even a spark. Maybe it could be a catalyst to figuring out what went wrong, where it went wrong, maybe figuring out how to begin to get it back. There are some very practical ways, practical things. I just touched on my little discovery this morning while I was getting ready to get in the shower. And I wanted to share that with y'all because I think it's so important. It's such a simple process. It's not easy. It's hard because you got to sift through some things, but it's a simple process of changing your perspective. And it's all connected to everything I've been talking to on this podcast or talking about on this podcast. Is specifically be curious, not judgmental. But it also goes along with whatever you put your attention to, you'll become attracted to. Whatever you become attracted to, you will pursue. I mean, if that's not in relationships, geez. And so, and the whole concept of choose, commit, confront, right? All of this stuff is connected, but there's just such a simple act of changing your perspective. And I've done that. I've done that. I was that way, man. I used to be that way. I wish I wasn't in my marriage. I wish I wasn't. It could have saved a lot of things. But I'm not that way now. I have this healthy, healed outlook on relationships and how I'm supposed to be as the man in the relationship. And I would love to share some of these things that I've discovered, some of the things that I do to help me continue to be this way. Some of the practical actions, like action steps, some of the mindful things. I'd love to share that with y'all. But thank you again. Thanks for humoring me on this episode as I geeked out a little bit. But reach out to me, email me, unfeignedpodcast@gmail.com. You can also DM me on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. I'd love to connect, especially if it's about this kind of stuff. I love this stuff. Even if it is just to share kind of, more specific details of my journey on regarding this. But definitely reach out. I'd love to connect. Till next time. See you then.